I think we need to start with kind of a level setting about ESOPs. And so I'm going to start by asking Gail the simple question of what on earth is an ESOP? Let's start there.
Let's start there. And it seems that it would be a simple question. ESOPs were first developed actually in 1956, believe it or not. And you'd think that by now we'd have all the answers. And I think with Kris and Kerry, you'll be able to hear pretty much all the answers about ESOPs today. But they've been around obviously then for a long time. They've since their establishment, they've been supported by legislation that directly encourages companies to and owners to establish ESOPs for the benefit of employees, with a view that from a policy perspective, it's very beneficial to have employee ownership of their companies. They're considered a defined contribution plan, like a 401k or profit sharing plan, in which the primary investment is employer stock. So they provide income to employees post termination and retirement, and they provide significant tax benefits to their sponsors. So that's a nutshell.
So one of the interesting things about it, of course, is that employees, while we always talk about it as employee ownership, technically the plan is the owner of the company and the employees are participants in a plan.
Right, that's right.
I wanted to, as we were getting started in here, like, so of the, right now in 2021, which is the last year for which there's data, there are about 6,300 ESOPs across the country. And those have over 10 million active participants and maybe another 4 million retirees that participate in the plans. And in total, over 2 trillion in retirement assets are available in all of those. So it really is a pretty powerful force. Most of them are private companies, over 90%, but some public companies have ESOPs as part of their structure. And they really vary in size. 57% are under 100 employees. There's another 33% that are between 100 and 1,000 employees. And then 10% have over 1,000 employees. So broad range of sizes, broad range of industries, right? We had 20% manufacturing, 19% professional and technical services, 15% in construction, 15% in wholesale and retail trade, 14% in finance, insurance, and real estate, and then the rest are others. But some of the biggest ones, right, if you go to the top 100 ESOPs in the country, a lot of them are engineering firms and retail supermarkets. So some of the biggest names are in those sectors. And then about 2/3 are structured as S Corps, right, which provide a lot of the tax benefits that I'm sure we'll get into here. And about 2/3 are leveraged. So those are the kind of the lay of the land in terms of what ESOPs are. And so I wanted to turn now to Kerry with his expertise in helping owners transition their companies. Why would a business owner, when thinking about an exit, why should they consider an ESOP?
Sure. Well, it's, in my opinion, it's one of the best ways to transition or exit a business. Not everyone should do an ESOP, but it should be at least put on the menu, like I said in opening comments. A lot of times when business owners are just trying to explore their options, a lot of times they're introduced to an M&A firm. And that M&A firm may talk about, a strategic sale or bringing in a private equity investment or auctioning the company. There's a number of different ways that you can, or going public. Again, a number of different ways you can transition or exit a business. But a lot of times those M&A firms do not establish ESOPs. They don't understand ESOPs or the 1042 component that goes along with them. So it's simply just not put on the menu. So for a lot of business owners, it's like going out to eat at a restaurant and, yeah, there's a burger, there's a fish sandwich, a salad, a taco, but there's no pizza. And if they knew pizza exists, I mean, pizza's pretty good. They may order pizza if they actually knew that pizza existed. So, but for an owner, what we find is when it is put on the menu, a lot of times owners are like, why didn't anybody ever talk to me about this? I had no idea, or I've heard about an ESOP, but this is not what I heard. This is a lot different. So there's a lot of times owners will say, this checks a lot of the boxes that I was looking, in a transition. And for an ESOP, a lot of times you can sell to an ESOP and you can achieve fair market value and your price. A lot of times it's beneficial to the employees. A lot of these business owners, a lot of them say, hey, the employees are the ones that got us here. And, there could be risk to the employees with other types of sales. So it does check a lot of the boxes. In our opinion, a lot more folks should be doing ESOPs, but not everybody.
And so on that front, well, let's stay with that. So you think they can achieve fair market value generally, that the transaction has to happen at a fair market value. It's got the potential for keeping employment for people you care about.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier that it can be very tax efficient. So do you want to touch just on the tax efficiency of it for a moment?
Sure. So as Gail said, I mean, at the end of the day, an ESOP is an ERISA qualified plan. And so we're really creating the buyer. We can guarantee that we can sell the company because we're creating the buyer for the selling owners. And then with that, Congress has allowed all kinds of tax benefits to go along with ESOPs. Really, at the end of the day, what we're doing is converting cash flows from taxable. You're converting the company into, in some cases fully or in some cases partially tax-free, and you're using those tax savings to buy out the selling owners. So there's all kinds of tax benefits to the company itself when you become an ESOP company. And then for the selling owners, there's a section, most of the folks on this call have heard of 1035, or excuse me, 1031 exchanges in real estate, or 1035 in the insurance world. In the ESOP world, for the selling owners, now understand the owners of these companies, they own their stock individually or in joint tenancy with their spouse or in a trust, but they're choosing individually to sell their stock into the ESOP. There's a component of the tax code 1042 for the selling owner, and it is an individual election. If they choose to do so, the proceeds that they receive from the sale of their stock into the ESOP, they can execute 1042, and it's a permanent deferral of the capital gains on the sale of their stock into the ESOP. So for the company, there's all kinds of tax benefits. For the individual sellers, there's tax benefits.
And if we go deeper on that question, we will get so technical that I will go to sleep. So we won't do that right now, but those are two powerful forces for both a selling owner and for a future company structure. Is there anyone, Gail, maybe you could touch on, are there businesses that shouldn't consider employee ownership as an option?
There are certainly, and I know Kerry can speak to some of this too. If your earnings are too volatile or unpredictable, then you're going to have a difficult time convincing a lender to support a leveraged ESOP arrangement, because really they have to be able to predict, obviously, the ability to repay the loan from the earnings of the company. And that's why, as you said, Kris, you see it so often with the engineering firms, with the grocery and retail, the areas where there's a very predictable, steady line of income. Those are the types of businesses that work beautifully for an ESOP. Also, if you don't have management continuity, I mean, if you're the owner, and you maybe often an owner founder and selling your company back to a trust that holds it for the benefit of the employees, you want to be sure that you've got management that'll continue to run the company, and because you're not going to have someone swooping in to provide that level of support that you would if you had a third-party sale. If you have significant capital needs for the company, that can sometimes be a problem where an ESOP isn't ideal. And also if you're a capital intensive company where a lot of the value is based on capital rather than having a broad employee base, it might not support enough contributions to an ESOP to fund the purchase of the shares. Those are just a few, and Kerry, I'd be interested in your thoughts too on other areas.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, you have to have succession to be able to do an ESOP. If you're looking to sell and you want out right now, and you don't have a runway of ahead of you, I mean, you want all your money, you want it right now, and you want to be done. That's not an ESOP. So you have to have succession. You're gonna get some money at closing potentially, and then get paid out over time. And then also you have to have some level of sophistication at the operating at the business level. There are companies that I mean, look, you can have $1 million in EBITDA and a handful of employees and some succession, and you can check the boxes that yes, we could do an ESOP, and you could even make financial sense out of it. But it may be the worst thing that you've done, because now if you've installed this ESOP for a company that really has, I mean, they're a great company. They may be 10, 20 million in revenue. They have a bookkeeper on staff, but they may not be able to survive the transaction. They may not have the sophistication or the time available to make the transaction successful. So that even though they might be able to do it, it may not make sense for them. They may be too small.
And that's really the level of compliance, documentation, right? The precision with which you have to operate your business is a lot higher in an ESOP. And when we were talking ahead of time, Kerry, I think you had a rule of thumb in terms of how much EBITDA somebody really needed to maybe have the sophistication in their organization to make it work.
Yeah, and that really is $1 million in EBITDA, or if they had 800 and they have add backs to get to that million or over, then financially, does the transaction make sense? Yes, you could make sense of it financially for them to do that. However, for a lot of companies of that size, we'll look at the company. We may decline to actually install an ESOP for them because we see that they could potentially fail because they can't handle the transaction. However, there are plenty of organizations out there that they could hire to bolt on to help bring that sophistication. And if they're willing to do that, then we can proceed. We just don't want to ever set somebody up for failure.
And one way to do that actually is to sell to an ESOP, right? To a pre-existing ESOP where you share the ESOP infrastructure together.